welcome to Mondo Street Presents. In this episode, I'm in conversation with SC Fisher, um, a young adult and new adult horror author. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're more than welcome. How are you today?
I'm really good, thank you. Bit cold, but
Yeah.
otherwise great.
Excellent, excellent. Um, you said you wanted to come on this show, so I did some deep diving into yourself, and
Oh, that sounds scary.
well, there's a couple of things that you've put on your website. One of the things which
Mm.
made me smile, and I love this little. It shows so much about somebody's personality by they put this little nugget that you started writing with a green crayon. I just
I
love that.
did.
Yeah.
I don't still use the green crayon. I have,
All the time, or just sometimes?
well, I mean, I find crayons are best for ransom notes, to be honest, harder to trace, but the actual novels, it's a bit
Yeah.
difficult to do 75,000 words solely in green
Oh,
crayon.
I can imagine. Yeah, yeah. But I love those little snippets that people. It doesn't mean that much to you because that was part of your experience of how you
Yeah.
started to become a writer, but it shows so much about you that there was that drive from such a young age that green crayon was the tool that was going to get these words out of you, these
It was, and
ideas.
I was completely committing plagiarism as well because I was just word for word, to the best of my ability, copying out a book called Duck Goes on Holiday.
Oh, yeah. We've all got to start somewhere. You learn to play the guitar, you plagiarizing the House of the Rising Sun or Smoke on the Water. It starts everywhere. So your series, the Base Fear series. So you've had 4 books in that.
4 books
Um,
so far, and we
so
have
far, yeah.
2 more excuse me, we have 2 more at the moment that are in editing and
Oh,
cover
nice.
design, so
Okay,
they will hopefully be joining the other 4 on the shelves very soon.
excellent. And just so that everybody knows what they are, that's Deadly Secrets, Deadly Ground, Mum's Woods, and Mum's Witch.
Yes,
Yeah,
indeed.
okay. And they get really good reviews. It's people are really taken to them, haven't they?
They have,
Yeah.
and every writer knows what imposter syndrome is. And
Every creative knows what imposter
yeah,
syndrome is. Yeah,
probably
yeah, yeah, yeah.
probably it does span the whole all the creative fields,
Mm,
and so it's very surreal. You put these things out there, and it's a huge part of yourself and all these personal feelings and your thought processes, and you put them out and you strip yourself completely bare in the eyes of the public, and you are really, really scared that people are going to hate it and
yeah.
that they're going to read it and they're going to think, "What on earth is this drivel that I've just wasted my money on?" And thankfully, that hasn't happened yet. But I believe it's a rite of passage for every author to get a few scathing reviews.
Yeah, I think that's where you earn your stripes, isn't it? Where
It
you've
is, yeah. And to
yeah.
be honest, as long as reviews are constructive,
Mhm.
it's absolutely fine for a reader
Yeah.
to not like something. Not every book is for every reader. And
Okay.
people should be free to be able to say that without
Totally.
worrying that they're
Yeah.
going to be dragged over the coals by the authors or the authors'
Mhm.
fans. So
Yeah.
it's completely fine to do that,
Yeah.
um, as long as it's constructive.
Yeah.
As
Because
long as you're saying, like, I didn't like this
yeah.
because I
Yeah.
felt this.
Yeah, I think literature is one of the last bastions of. I won't say free speech. That's a bit too. That's a bit too grand.
Oh,
But it's
we'll
one.
get very deep soon, won't
But but
we?
but but it is one of the last bastions of a lack of censorship.
Yeah,
We can write a story in any genre we choose to, and we can pretty much use any adjectives, any scenarios that we choose to, and there aren't too many people burning books at the moment, thankfully, unless you're in Florida or places like
yeah.
that. Yeah,
Well, it still does happen. It still does
yeah,
happen.
mm,
However, there is a freedom in writing
mm,
that perhaps filmmakers and songwriters don't have the same freedom. They don't enjoy
mm,
the same freedoms
yeah,
because there is actually no censorship board for
yeah,
writing.
yeah.
We we watch a film and it's been classified
Yep.
according to age rating and what's appropriate. Songs will have certain words taken out of them to
Hmm.
be suitable for the radio. And we don't really get that in books.
Mm.
It really is down to the publishing houses and the editors and what they are comfortable putting out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you search long and hard enough, you will generally find a publishing house that will be comfortable with whatever you've written.
Yeah. And we should celebrate that, because that ability to have the written word say just about any story or tell just about any story is critically important, because it feeds the minds of so many people and informs the minds of people who have restricted media or livelihoods.
Yes, and writing things down, it's not just fictional stories, but real life stories. It's incredibly important
Yeah.
because these are the things that will survive for future generations.
Hmm.
And hopefully, they will tell the real stories, the true stories, and people will be able to get a feel for what the environments were like and what that period of history was
Mm.
actually like.
Yeah. Yeah. Critically important. I just want to go back to the Green Crown for a minute. I am totally, totally enthralled by the Green Crown. How old were you?
Oh, I think I must have been about 4 or 5. I
4 or 5.
couldn't really have been any
Yeah.
older than that.
Do you recall the first time that you had what we would call like an original story thought? That's something that you created yourself. You went, oh, I quite like that.
I used to read a lot of Goosebumps books
Oh
in
yeah, great
primary
books.
school.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was a huge fan of those books, and we had a really lovely, few teachers who they didn't care what we were reading as long as
mm,
we were reading, and they weren't about saying, "Oh, no, kids, you can't read scary stories, you should be reading this." And so they used to encourage us to talk about the books that we were reading, and if you wanted to write your own story, they would
yeah.
allow you to write the story, and then they would dedicate a little bit of time at the end of the day where you could read it aloud to the class.
Oh, fantastic.
So I think maybe I must have been about 9, and I was there writing my own
Mm,
spin on these Goosebumps stories,
that's really good.
and being very fortunate where I had teachers who would let me stand up and have this
Yeah.
platform to tell my classmates, and then other
Mhm.
people would do it too, and
Yeah.
it was fun. It was like
Yeah.
having a little book club for kids.
One of the questions I always ask is nature or nurture. So if you look at your environment from when you were growing
Mm.
up, was there anybody in the family or close friends who were particularly supportive of you in your writing and in fledgling writing and your development, or do you feel it was something that was already in you that was just coming out?
My grandmother was a huge reader, so that definitely helped me to develop a love of books
Mm,
and reading. And
yeah.
she would take my library card on my behalf when I was in school, and she'd go to the library and
Nice.
she would choose 5 books for me in the
Yeah.
week, and I would read every single one of those books, and then she'd take them back and she'd get me 5 more. And she was very patient if I didn't know what a particular word meant.
Yeah.
She was a very clever woman, and
Mm,
she would be there with the answer, and
yeah.
she'd explain it to me in a way that was appropriate and understandable for whatever
Excellent.
age I was at.
Yeah.
So she definitely played a big part in my love of the written word.
Mm,
And I think growing up in a family where most people are big fans of the horror genre,
mm.
that also helped. My mum is a big watcher of horror, my
Oh,
dad as
nice. Yeah.
well. Um, it's been inherited by myself, obviously, and also my sister,
Yeah.
and so I think I think it's a bit of both, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think you can pick one or the other.
No, I don't think you can. I think if you are a truly creative mind, there is that obviously that element of it being nature.
Mm.
But we do tend to find that people that are outstanding in a field do have nurture as well.
Yes, I think it's always important to have people who encourage you
Mm.
and will give those encouraging words. And as I said, at primary school, we had some very encouraging teachers.
Yeah.
When I then went into secondary school, the English teachers, they were always very encouraging. So I think I was fortunate in that respect as well,
Mm.
that outside of the household,
Yeah.
there was a bank of people who really just wanted to see kids reading and writing and developing.
Yeah, that's and that is incredibly powerful in its own. Did you, with so much of a love of horror within the family already, did you gravitate towards horror immediately, or did you take a while to find a level platform where you'd go, "That's my direction"?
Well, I would read a variety of books. Back when I was very little, I was a fan of The Famous Five and
Oh,
The
yeah.
Secret Seven, and
Yeah.
I read a lot of the Roald Dahl books and various other things. I grew up in Wales, so some mythology
Mm.
stories as well. Um, a lot of Jacqueline Wilson,
Mm. Yeah.
which probably many women of a certain age will remember Jacqueline Wilson
Yeah. Yeah.
stories. Um, so I did vary what I read, but I definitely think with writing, I have tended to just stick within the one
Mm.
genre. And I don't mind other things bleeding over into it. I don't mind a bit of romance within my
Mm.
horror, or
Yeah.
um, a little bit of action or some fantasy. But for me, scary things are fun.
I've got a question about that for you in a little bit because I completely subscribe to that.
Mm,
I am a massive horror fan. Um, I think it's more than probably my favorite um, type of film to watch because I'm
mm.
more a audio visual. Um, after silly, stupid 90s and 80s action movies, the kind of thing that just washes over you. But I do believe that a good horror film is actually quite good for you.
Yeah, I mean, they do say that you need one good shock a day to get the heart
Yeah.
going, don't
Yeah,
they?
yeah,
So,
totally. Yeah, yeah. Check the heart rate variability score. How did that film
yeah,
do? Yeah, that's great. Yeah, kept me going.
have a
Kept me
glance
going.
at the Apple Watch, see what's going on, and
Yeah.
has it been a good film? Yes, we've spiked to 120 beats per minute. So,
That's brilliant. Do you want to just take a moment and explain to me that? So, horror as a genre, people see it as, it's a good ghost story, or there's a protagonist or an antagonist. There's always that one piece of evil or the wrongdoer.
mm,
And sometimes it can be quite extreme, but what you've done, you're writing for young adults and new adults.
yes.
There must be a line you can't cross. From how graphic things become. How is it writing in that genre?
I think the tricky thing is that you never truly know where the line is because every reader's own personal line is completely different.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if you've heard some people say when they read horror novels or they watch horror films, "Does the dog die?" And for
Yeah.
some people, that's the line. They can't take
That's
anything
that's my
like
line.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some people are very sensitive to anything to do with children.
Mhm.
Some people are sensitive to religious themes. So you never truly know where a person's line is,
Mhm.
and therein lies the difficulty.
Yeah.
So there are certain rules that you know that you need to stick to. With young adult, you have to tone down any bad language. It
Mhm.
can't be as explicit as it might be in
Yeah.
adult books. Um, but that was definitely one that I wrestled with, and I had a friend who I messaged quite a few times, and I would say, "I have this scene in my head,
Mm.
and this happens, and then this happens. Is it too much?" And even though I am a mother, I have teenagers,
Mm.
mine are not a particularly good yardstick to measure
Mm.
these things by because they've grown up with me. So
Yeah.
they're slightly more warped than the average child. Um, so whether my child can handle it is again
Yeah.
not an indication that somebody else's child can handle it.
Yeah.
But so far, I haven't had any complaints about traumatizing anybody. So fingers crossed,
Yeah.
I stuck within those lines fairly well.
Good. When you're writing, are you writing, you just write it and then revise it for the age bracket? I'll use a really, man on the street tag for it. Do you bring it back down? So you just write it as you think it and bring it back down? Or as you do it more and more, do you find yourself writing within that age bracket?
I think eventually, because as well these books are told from the first person perspective,
Hmm.
you almost have to become that character. And
Right.
I was conscious that because books one and two, books three and four, and books five and six, they're all about different characters.
Okay.
So it was important that the voice from one and two didn't become the voice of three and four or the
Yeah.
voice of
Yeah.
five and six.
Hmm.
So yes, so you sort of end up slipping into the character's voice in your
Hmm.
own head.
Right.
And I try to write them and not go back to revise,
Okay.
because sometimes that can actually prevent you from finishing a book if you
I
get
can
stuck in the
imagine.
revision
Yeah.
process
Mm.
and you just look at everything you've written and you think, oh no, this is awful. Why am I wasting my time? I need to go back and revise this. And
Yeah.
you get stuck in the rut of constant revision.
Hmm.
So I very much tried to just get to the end and then go back and have multiple read throughs of it. I sent it to a couple of trusted people
Hmm.
to have their opinions. And sometimes you would find a line and you would think, oh, actually, I don't think a young person would say that.
Okay.
Or, oh, okay, so I've said that they're thinking about this here. However, would a younger person have that critical thinking ability? Would they be
Right. Yeah.
more concerned with X, Y, Z?
Hmm.
So there is certainly a degree of revision once you're done to make
Hmm.
sure that you're staying within the age bracket that you're trying to write.
Yeah. But at the same time, having the confidence of trusting your process that you do know what you're writing and not going over and checking every word or phrase or sentence and then continually stuck in the editing loop,
Yes,
which,
it's
yeah,
it's very hard
yeah,
because it's so easy to get stuck in that loop.
yeah.
But as I say, it's often the kiss of death for an
Mm,
idea if you do end up just circling round and round and round.
mm. I would agree. I'm a musician, and when I'm recording, I can hear things on a first pass, and then on a second
Mm.
pass, and on a third pass, and I could keep on going and keep on going and listening and listening and listening and changing. And there's a very common phrase. Was it something about, I forgot what it is, so I won't. I'll take that bit out because I've just forgotten what the phrase was. The same
It's
was,
catching.
oh, it happens to me a lot. What do you consider to be the scariest scene that you've written? And when you were writing it, or when you were getting ready to write it, how did you prepare yourself to write it? Because obviously, it's got to get your blood going, it's got to get your temperature and your heart rate up. What do you think is your scariest scene?
That's a really good question. That's actually one I've not been asked before.
Good.
And for me, it's a little bit difficult because I don't actually find horror scary
Okay.
because I I know it's not the vast majority, it's not
Mm.
real.
Yeah.
And I've always known that from a very young age, which I think probably enables me to love it so much
Mm.
because I've never feared it. Um, to me, people are more frightening than
Mm.
anything I could see in a horror film because we know there are people out there who will harm you, who want to harm you. And
Mm.
my grandmother, who I've just spoken about, she used to say, it's not the dead that will hurt you, it's the living.
It is.
And that is very, very true.
Mm.
So personally, I don't find it scary, but I think probably one of the eeriest scenes I've written is in the third book of the Base Fear series, which is Mum's Woods, and
Yeah.
it's towards the end of that
Okay.
book
Mm.
because book one ends on a cliffhanger. You then need to get to book two to find
Mhm.
out what happens, and then book
Yep.
three ends on a cliffhanger. You have to go to four to find out what happens.
Yeah.
So for our cliffhanger in book three, um, we have the main character, and she is actually an American living
Okay.
in the UK.
Yeah.
All of these stories are based on or around military bases.
Yep.
And so, as an American in the UK, she attends a British school, but the school have tried to be more accommodating to the American
Okay.
students because
Yeah.
there's a large number of them. So they've allowed them to have things like cheerleading squads. And she witnesses something at a
Okay.
football game between some of the cheerleaders, and she thinks this is odd, this is strange. So one of the cheerleaders runs off the field, and
Mhm.
she decides to follow to see if this girl is okay. And she makes her way into the shower room, and some pretty, hopefully, horrible things happen in there.
Well,
um,
they sound. I'm getting nervous already. So.
but it all came down to the legend that the third and fourth books are based on.
Okay.
They're actually based in Suffolk, where I'm currently living,
Yeah.
and it's to do with the witch trials
Okay.
that obviously famously occurred around here.
Mhm.
And one of the American Air Force bases in the area actually has a legend about a young woman who was dragged from her home, mob mentality,
Yeah.
obviously,
Yeah.
accused of witchcraft, and she was staked to the ground, they say, with yew branches
Ooh.
through the knees and through the elbows.
Oh, how unpleasant.
Yes, I mean, apparently the thinking was so that, if she was a witch when she passed, she then couldn't get back up and seek her vengeance.
Yeah.
Um, but the site of this apparent horrible crime is now within the fences
Oh,
of one of the US Air Force bases,
yeah.
and it's now a woodland. So the rumor is that this woodland is actually haunted
Oh,
by the spirit of this poor girl who
yeah.
met a not very nice end.
Yeah.
And so I used elements of this
Mm.
for the story. And obviously, a big feature of it was the yew trees.
Mhm.
And yew trees have these nice little round red berries, which apparently are highly poisonous.
Okay.
And so I thought, well, what could be better than turning these berries into tiny little spiders? And I'm a complete arachnophobe as well. So for,
Oh
for
dear.
me, this was the eeriest part.
Yeah,
So
that is unpleasant. That,
So she
yeah.
goes into this changing room, and she is looking for this girl, and she
Mm,
finds her bag
mm.
abandoned, and she puts her hand inside this girl's bag
Yeah,
searching for some sorts of clues, and she comes
yeah.
out with this handful of berries, and they promptly start to grow little spindly legs,
Oh,
and then they like to swarm her, and
oh,
they're in her
oh,
hair, and
nice.
they're going for the ears and the
Oh.
nostrils and the belly button. So, to address a
Uh,
previous question, apparently the line is quite is quite far in front.
yeah, because that can conjure quite mature imagery, can't it? Obviously, the more life experience you have, the more things you see, your imagination can imagine more. For me, that's fairly, and I don't mind spiders, but that idea is really quite horrific.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's why I nominated it as probably the
yeah,
creepiest
yeah.
scene I've ever written. I mean, each family within these books, they're all military families,
Mm,
and each family has a different setup because I wanted to address the fact that military families are just like any other family, and every single family looks different.
yeah.
So the family in the first two books, there are two teenage children, and we have the dad who's away on deployment, which is something that is very familiar to
Hmm.
military families.
Yeah.
And then we have quite a young mum who has just recently had another baby. So in this one, we have a young baby.
Mm,
And that was really the one for me where I was quite conscious of, oh,
mm.
I don't want to go too far.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
want to scare people,
yeah.
but at the same time, I don't want to make people think what's wrong with this woman. So
Mm. I love
I
that.
hit upon the idea of at the end of every second book, I include a little just short chapter that discusses the real legends of the
That's a
areas and of the
that's a good idea.
bases,
Yeah, yeah.
and I just sort of outline which parts are actually based. There's some sort of kernel of truth to them,
Yeah, yeah.
um, and which things I just
That's a
completely
that's a
made up.
yeah, that's a really good idea, that. That's
Just
really
so
good.
if anybody is like reading under the covers past
Mm.
midnight, they're not too freaked out and can't get to sleep
Yeah,
because they know that it's not
yeah,
real. That's the
yeah.
important thing with horror,
Oh,
I
yeah,
think,
yeah, yeah,
is knowing
yeah,
this isn't real.
yeah.
This isn't going to come for you. There aren't any spider berries that I'm aware of.
Thankfully, thankfully. You've already said that when you're writing, you get into the voice of the characters in your head. You're writing in their voice. How do you think you would fare if you had to go into one of your books yourself and be that character and face the challenges that that character's facing?
It would be an incredibly short book because I would shut the door and I'd go, nope. And that would be the end.
See, you writers, you've got all these great scary stories, and you're just like, not for me, thank you.
I would be camped out with an old priest and a young priest and a multitude of holy books. You would
Yeah.
not get one over on me.
So no spider berries for you then?
Absolutely not.
No. See, I always thought that somebody that's writing a scene would project part of themselves into that scene.
I think that can happen. Sometimes you do
Mm.
have to ask yourself, well, if I was in this situation,
Yeah.
what would I think? What would I do? What would I feel? What would I say?
Mhm.
Um, but then you also have to have an awareness that with horror films and horror novels, if the character does act completely logically, as
Yeah.
I say, it will be a very, very short book or a very, very
Mm.
short movie because the majority of us would move into the haunted house, we would see our first ghost,
Yeah.
and then we'd pack our bags and leave.
Yeah.
We wouldn't stick it out. We wouldn't say, oh, but the mortgage rates are low. We all have some sort of sense of self-preservation that people in
Yeah.
horror movies and novels just don't have.
No, they have the logic switch firmly turned off, don't they, sometimes?
And as a writer, you kind of have to subscribe to that. You have
Yeah.
to do that.
Yeah.
I definitely wanted to try to make things as logical as possible.
Mhm.
So again, in books 3 and 4, there are a couple of disappearances of
Mhm.
teenagers. Now,
Yeah.
in this day and age, what teenager leaves the house without their cell phone or
Nope.
their Apple Watch
Nope.
or some other kind of device that if they're missing, you can
Mhm.
immediately just ping off the nearest mast and see
Yeah.
where this person has gone.
Yeah.
So it was being very strategic and thinking, right, okay, so how can I get rid of these devices?
Mhm.
Um, how can I make sure that it's logical and people aren't saying, oh well, if they've gone missing, why didn't they just do this? Why didn't they just do that?
Mhm.
I tried to cover my bases. I tried to think of all the possible things that I needed to do to
Yeah.
make sure that it was at least a little bit believable.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think you're right there. If you go to a low budget slasher, then every decision, every turn is the illogical one, simply to progress the story.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there is actually a film, I don't know if you've seen it, called The Cabin in the Woods.
Yes.
And it brilliantly plays
Yeah.
on this idea that people in horror films just seem to have no a sense of self-preservation,
Yeah.
and that is the whole crux of the film, that
Mm.
actually the cast, the characters, they're trying to behave logically,
Yeah.
and we have these people overseeing it all going, oh well,
Mhm.
hang on, that's not going to work for us. So
Yeah. Quick change their minds.
yes,
Yeah.
in all
Yeah.
sorts of fun ways.
Yeah. It is a strange film. Um, if you um if you had to be the big bad in a horror book, film, pick your medium, which one would you be? So
Oh, that's an excellent question. There's just so many. I
I
like
know, I know.
I like a villain that you can identify with. So a villain where if you squint, you can see their point.
Yeah.
That was sort of the brilliant thing about Thanos in the Marvel
Yeah,
universe
yeah,
was he
yeah,
was
I agree,
doing
I
these
agree.
terrible things, but actually he did have a little bit of a point. We were destroying the planets and,
Yeah,
there
yeah,
was too many people and, was
yeah,
it the best way to go about it? No, absolutely not. But could we see the kernel of logic? Yeah,
yeah.
probably a
Yeah.
little bit. So I like a sympathetic villain.
A sympathetic villain, right.
So, I mean, somebody like Dracula. I
Yeah,
mean, he's a huge romantic. He's doing this all for love.
yeah,
He's crossed oceans of time to
yeah.
find her. And frankly, she's quite ungrateful about it,
She
really.
she just does not appreciate the effort he's gone to and the money.
She absolutely doesn't.
Yeah,
She
the
really doesn't. He's
money.
offering her eternity, and I don't know what to say. He's a
Yeah,
sympathetic villain for me because
yeah,
he does terrible things, undoubtedly,
yeah.
but he does them in the name of survival.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, he just wants to be reunited with this person who he believes
Mm.
is the reincarnation of the woman that he has loved.
Yeah, yeah. See, I'd choose Hannibal Lecter because a boy's got to eat.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Feeling peckish?
Feeling
Nom nom
peckish.
nom.
And if it wasn't Hannibal Lecter, I'd go for the shark out of Jaws.
There's
Yeah,
a real food theme here, isn't
there
there?
is, there is. I haven't had my tea yet. I think that's what it is.
Ah, okay, that explains it.
We've already talked about horror can be good for you. Um, I think it can be therapeutically good for you. We talk about people that have like arachnophobia. We'll talk about
Mm,
the spider berries again. You can actually expose yourself to things that you were afraid of via reading horror stories or watching
you
horror films,
can.
and
And
start to desensitize.
yeah, it's a safe environment.
Yeah.
You know that you're sitting in your bedroom at home, you're perfectly safe.
Mm.
Nothing bad is going to happen to you, other than a paper cut potentially. So it's safe desensitization, which is
Mm.
something you cannot say 10 times fast.
I couldn't say it twice fast. So you,
It
you've
took me
got
long enough to get it out the first time.
you've got me beat there straight away. Um, if you could collaborate with any author in any genre,
Mm.
living or dead,
Oh,
who would it be?
the kid in me would say R.L. Stein.
Yeah.
He just he sparked that love of reading, I think, for
Mm.
so many children.
Yeah.
He was the slippery slope into depraved horror for so many of us.
Yeah.
And he just seems like a kind man, somebody who obviously I don't know him personally, but
Yeah.
he seems like somebody who appreciates the success he's had,
Yeah.
who appreciates the people who look up to him. I'm not aware of any kind of horrible scandals around him,
No, no.
which is nice. So, yeah, the kid in me would absolutely say, R.L. Stein, let's
Yeah.
get together. Let's write a Fear Street.
That's really nice. There's a new TV show coming out of Goosebumps.
I do. It's out already.
Is it out already with David Schwimmer? Yeah.
Yes, I've
Yes.
watched a couple of episodes with my
Right.
youngest
Yeah.
already.
Yeah.
So we're liking what we see so far. But I think he's one of those kids writers, a bit like Roald Dahl,
Mm.
who'll be known for a long time
Yes,
after
hopefully.
they're gone.
Hopefully, yeah. 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 So that's the kid in you.
Yes.
Who would the adult in you want to collaborate with?
Mm, I really like Grady Hendrix,
Oh, okay.
who is another horror author.
Yeah.
Um, but everything he writes is done with an edge of humor,
Oh, nice.
which I appreciate as
Yeah.
well. I
Yeah.
like a good horror comedy.
Yeah.
I don't think we can take life too seriously. Um, So yeah, I would say Grady Hendrix.
Yeah,
Mm.
fantastic. I love the fact that you've got those in your mind already. That it doesn't take too long to pull,
Well, a
your
girl has
favorites
to
out.
have goals, doesn't she?
Yeah.
So
Well,
if
talk.
either of them are listening, R.L. Stein, Grady Hendrix,
Yeah,
hit me up.
yeah. It's there is work to be done.
There is. Slide
There is
into my
work to be done.
Insta DMs and I'll see if I can fit you in.
Yeah, I'm sure we could make a window.
I,
Yeah,
I I'd carve out a little pocket of time
yeah, yeah.
somewhere.
You'd be grateful for the opportunity. You wouldn't be like me in a harker, would you? Be like, no, no,
No,
no. Yeah,
exactly.
please,
Exactly.
please. Um, I do like that. Obviously, you've got two more books in edit at the moment, so that's books 5 and 6. What other medium would you aspire to have your work in?
I would love to have some audiobooks.
Yeah.
I'm not one of these people who thinks that audiobooks are cheating and that they're not
Mm,
reading. I think if you have that kind of attitude, you're gatekeeping
mm,
storytelling. And the thing
yeah.
is, if you listened to an audiobook of Dracula
Hmm.
and I read the book Dracula, we both still know the same story.
Yes.
We have
Yeah.
consumed the same words.
Yep.
We could analyze the characters in exactly the same way.
Hmm.
Nothing is different.
Yeah.
So I would very much like to have some audiobooks
Hmm.
to make things more accessible to people who either don't have the time for reading
Yeah.
or who struggle with reading for whatever reasons.
Hmm.
Um, and then I think it's every writer's dream to see something
Mm,
on TV,
yeah. Yeah.
isn't it?
Wouldn't that be just fantastic?
It would be amazing. I
It
think
would.
Base Fear would make a really good Nickelodeon show.
I concur. Yeah. So if there are any TV executives or directors or yeah,
BBC,
yeah,
ITV, I'm
yeah,
not fussy.
any of the streamers,
Any,
yeah,
absolutely any.
we'll
We
take
can
any
talk
money. We'll take any money. We can launder it ourselves. Thank you.
as long as
All
I get
right.
to sit on set and
Yeah.
just stare open mouthed. That's fine.
I do love that. So put yourself another year, 18 months from now, books 5 and 6 are finished or published or received well. Where do you want to go then? Well, I didn't think my questions were that offensive.
I'm so sorry about that.
That's
I lost
okay.
my internet connection.
It's all
So it was
right.
cue a mad panic to
No,
reset the
so
router.
it's okay. I know when I'm not wanted.
It was almost like you said to me,
Yeah.
where do you see yourself in 18 months? Well, I'm not going to tell you.
Yeah. Yeah. 18 months, I will have transformed into a horrible vampire looking for the love of my life. And
Yeah,
it's
I
not you. See ya.
think that's a really impertinent question, and I'm off.
Oh my God. I'm so sorry I offended you.
Sorry, there was a call from R.L. Stein on the other line.
Who wasn't I, madam? Get you. Well, it's funny because I was talking to Grady, what's his face, while you were on there, and he offered more money. So,
Oh.
yeah. He said, "Can I have some music for my new show?" I said, "Who's writing it?" I said, "Not her. She hangs up on you, mate." Just look forward 18 months. The books 5 and 6 have been released. They've been well received. Do you want to continue writing in the young adult, new adult genre? Do you have any aspirations to spread out into any other areas or any other stories that are in you that need to come out?
So I have already started the next novel.
Mm.
It's not young adult, it is
Ah,
an adult horror novel.
okay.
So I can be a bit naughtier in this one. I'm sure you're thrilled to hear.
Well, I'm just thinking, how much further can you go after spider berries?
Quite
Um,
far, you'd be
yeah,
surprised.
yeah.
Usually depends how warped the individual is.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah.
Yes, so I'm taking a foray into zombies.
Nice.
and I have a working title, which is The Z Era,
Ooh,
and it's kind of a combination of themes.
okay.
So we have a zombie apocalypse going
Hmm.
on,
Yeah.
but the main theme of the book is toxic friendships
Okay.
and how we can have these friendships where neither one of us is necessarily a bad person. We're all
Yeah.
flawed because we're all
Hmm.
human, but neither one
Yeah.
of us is necessarily a bad person. We're just perhaps not good for each other.
Yeah.
And we can bring out the absolute worst in each other sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that can just be the case, can't it? That
Mm,
two people can meet and you really think that you hit it off, but time soon starts to tell
yeah.
that this isn't the best
Mm.
friendship for either of you. So it's what would happen if there was a zombie apocalypse and you had to survive it with your toxic best friend?
Oh God. Oh, I think I'd survive quite quickly because they'd be zombie food.
But you could push them in front of the
Oh yeah,
zombie, couldn't you? But
yeah. That'll slow them down for a few seconds. I think the zombie storyline, it always taps into one of our base fears as humans, doesn't it? That
Yes.
that fight or flight, but not being able to flight because the sheer numbers that are around you all the time, and the teeth and the biting and the clawing.
Yes,
Yeah.
and when some films change it up and you actually have fast zombies,
Mm,
that's even more terrifying.
yeah. That's
Because if you're watching The Walking Dead and they're just sort of shambling along,
mm.
you can convince yourself, I might stand a chance there.
Yes.
If I could,
Yeah.
climb a ladder or something, I might
Yeah.
have them
Mm,
foiled. But fast zombies, no.
no.
We're all zombie chow, aren't we, in the
We
end?
are. At some point, we're all going to be, yeah, brains.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you're going for fast zombies then?
No, I don't think
Oh,
I am.
oh, right. Okay.
I don't think I'm going to go for fast zombies.
Right.
Because again, as I say, I do like to try and consider things and think, well,
Mm.
actually, how realistic is it that this would
Yeah.
happen
Yeah.
and such and
Yeah.
such. Obviously, zombies not particularly realistic to begin with, but
Well, have you been
um,
to Florida recently?
I haven't.
No.
Believe the weather's lovely,
Oh, the weather's fantastic, but be careful where you walk in.
right? Um, but these these two ladies, they also have a child in tow with them,
Okay. Yeah.
who is quite young.
Mm.
So that adds another element of, two women,
Mm.
one of whom is absolutely not cut out for the zombie life.
Yeah.
One of whom is a little bit more um, confident and capable,
Mm.
but again, they're facing things that nobody's ever faced before on their own, child
Yeah.
in tow.
Yeah.
Would they last 3 minutes with fast zombies?
Mm.
Unlikely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unlikely. I have to give them a fighting chance.
You do. You do.
Otherwise, I have no story.
Yeah. And that's that's that as much reality as you can blend into that storyline, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, you've got to have that chance. I think World War Z is most probably one of the most successful zombie books, even though I don't think they're allowed to say zombie in it, are they? But the chances of people surviving in that film and that book was just, I don't know.
It was slim to none, really,
It,
wasn't
it,
it?
it
It,
was a
it
bit
wasn't going to
OTT.
happen.
Yeah.
Um, the 28 Days Later
Yep.
film,
Yep.
again, I think that one, most people, our days would be numbered.
Oh, yes.
Um,
Yes. Yeah.
as I say, The Walking Dead,
Mm.
we might be in with a chance, maybe.
I'd like to think we would be. I really would like to. It depends who my toxic friend was, though. They'd have to be quite burly and have some meat on them to get
Someone you
an
could
extra few.
hide behind.
Yeah, they'd need to give me a good few seconds head start. So yeah, tip them over, push them in. Um, any recommendations of books or films that you've seen that you think people should see that maybe aren't as popular or out there?
So for books,
Yep.
I am a fan of a lady called Laura Purcell,
Okay.
who writes sort of gothic
Hmm.
horror, I would
Nice.
say. And it's not immediately in your face horror.
Yeah.
It's something you have to think about. In a few of her books, almost until the very last page, you're thinking, is this or isn't this supernaturally themed?
Yeah. Nice.
And most of the time, it tends to be so,
Yeah.
but she disguises it in other themes.
Mm.
So definitely check out Laura Purcell.
Yeah.
Um, I'm a big fan of The Woman in Black,
That is
written
a good
by
fact.
Susan Hill.
Yeah, I recently saw the film adaptation of that, and I was actually quite surprised by it.
I enjoy the film.
Yeah.
I believe that the version made in the 1980s was scarier than
Ah,
the
right. Okay.
modern adaptation.
Yeah.
Haven't seen that one yet.
Okay.
I'm going to try and track it down.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the book is very good. If you
Mhm.
can go and see the stage show,
Yeah.
even better.
Oh, nice.
Um, very big fan of the Uncanny podcast
Okay.
and also the Haunted UK podcast.
Yep.
Um, and another horror film that is maybe not so well known is one with Jeffrey Dean Morgan, who
Yeah.
was in Supernatural and The Walking Dead,
Yeah.
called The Possession. That's lots
Seen
of
it.
fun.
That is a good one. That.
Very good one.
Yeah. There's some definitely questionable moments in that that make you think, yeah, maybe I can watch Channel 5 instead.
I would put that child up for adoption.
I,
That would be it.
I can't say in a recorded environment what I'd do to that kid if it started doing that. I'd be like, right, just imagine there's a zombie coming. You're going first. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you.
Oh, good. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I really,
It's
I've learned a
been
lot from you.
fun.
Thank you. I've learned a lot from you. I think your whole passion for writing is infectious, and I think it really comes across well. I would truly recommend people go and dig out your work and enjoy it. Get in touch with you via Instagram because you're on Instagram. You've got Facebook
I am, yes,
as well.
Facebook.
Yeah.
I am on TikTok. Not very good at it, but
Yeah,
still there.
yeah. TikTok is the weirdest algorithm in the world.
It really
Um,
is. It really is.
yeah, unless
I
you're
mean,
doing silly dances.
well, the one that I tend to find on my For You page is a man who owns a Kermit the Frog puppet, and he dresses it up, and
Okay.
Kermit performs songs from the musicals. And I'm not ashamed to say that I really enjoy this.
Okay. So book number 8 from you is about a possessed Kermit the Frog.
It, who knows?
Yeah, which is
Who
another
knows?
another great horror film, Magic with Anthony Perkins.
Oh, I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, I think it's
There's
ooh,
quite a few puppet
yeah,
toy themed horrors, and
yeah.
if you take a look back in history at sort of the first toys or the early development of
Mhm.
toys, you can absolutely see why. Some of them
Oh yeah,
are very eerie.
yeah, yeah.
There's also a brilliant haunted item artifact museum in
Right.
Nottingham,
Oh, that's good.
and you can have a little tour around that. They have a number of dolls that they say are haunted dolls, and they also have some props that have appeared in films.
As long as
And
it's not that Annabelle doll, I ain't going
they
anywhere
don't
near that
have
thing.
that one. I believe that one's in America. But as we were speaking about the film The Possession,
Yeah.
they actually claim to have a Dybbuk box
All right.
in their collection, and
Fantastic.
you can go and have a look if you're brave enough
Yeah, and stand
and in
close to
that
it
neck
and
of the woods.
yeah, stand there muttering some weird incantation, and the windows start flexing at you.
As long
No.
as you don't touch it, you'll be fine.
Well, that's what they say. Let's go and find out, shall we?
That's how they
Let's
get you down there.
yeah, that is, yeah, yeah. Yeah. What they don't tell you is the millionth customer gets a possession for free. Um,
I feel like that's quite the deal.
I think it could be actually, yeah. Imagine the book you could write if you're possessed and then exercised. Hmm. Yeah.
So I'm going to jot that one down. I'll give you full credit.
Thank you, thank you. My secret past as the devil. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you so much. Um, best of luck with the new books. Continued
Thank
success
you.
with the books that are already out. I'm really looking forward to the zombie one.
Fantastic. I hope people are.
Sometime next year, sometime this year.
I am crossing my fingers to get through as quickly as I possibly can. I
Yeah,
have my whole plan,
yeah,
um, and I'm raring to go. So
good, good,
fingers crossed it will be soon,
great. Well,
before
we'll
the
look forward to
actual
that.
zombie
Yeah.
apocalypse
Okay.
hits.
Well, what we'll do then is when your zombie book comes out, come back on,
I would love that.
and I'll tell you just how much you owe me for therapy after
Oh,
reading it.
okay. No, I think I might be busy.
That book was £750 worth of damage. Thank you ever so much, Samantha. I really do
You are
appreciate
very
it.
welcome. Thank you for
Thank you.
having me again.
Cheers. Thank you.